Nietzsche is not a conventional philosopher. He doesn't merely aim to argue or persuade with reason. His philosophy strikes, delivering shocks that shake the spirit, destabilize certainties, and expose the emptiness behind many so-called sacred values. The idea of the hammer is a powerful metaphor for this approach. More than destroying, Nietzsche wants to test. Just like a piano tuner taps the strings to see if they resonate truly, the philosopher must tap cultural idols to see whether they still ring with truth or are simply hollow. In Twilight of the Idols, where this hammer imagery takes center stage, Nietzsche clearly states his intention to reevaluate the core of Western thought. The book's subtitle, How to Philosophize with a Hammer, already suggests his bold departure from academic politeness. Nietzsche isn't interested in preserving tradition for tradition's sake. Instead, he calls for a radical confrontation with inherited beliefs, demanding that we think anew and feel the full weight of the present. One of Nietzsche's first targets is Christian morality. Far from being universal or divine, he argues it's a historical invention, a tactical maneuver. The weak, filled with resentment toward the strong, created a system of values that turned suffering into virtue, submission into purity, and denial of natural instincts into holiness. This slave morality is, for Nietzsche, it's a psychological revenge, a reversal of values created to subdue those who once held power. To this decaying system, Nietzsche contrasts what he calls master morality, not a justification for cruelty, but a set of values rooted in vitality, creativity, and strength. The noble individual does not wait for permission to live fully. He affirms life, invents values, and acts from a place of internal necessity rather than external approval. Here, the hammer strikes hard at the core of guilt, that toxic legacy of a morality that demonizes desire, power, and the will to live. With intensity, perhaps Nietzsche's most famous declaration is that God is dead. Yet this is not a literal claim nor a theological argument. It is a cultural diagnosis. The death of God refers to the collapse of the entire structure of meaning that had, for centuries, grounded Western civilization. As science, modernity, and secularism advanced, the idea of a divine guarantor of truth became unsustainable. With his death, the absolute values and eternal purposes that people depended on fell apart, leaving a void. But Nietzsche does not mourn this loss. He welcomes it as an opening. If God is dead, then man must become the creator of meaning. This is the birth of the Übermensch, the overman, or beyond man, misunderstood by many. This concept isn't about physical or political superiority. It's about transcending the constraints of herd morality and tradition. The Übermensch is one who dares to invent, to take responsibility for values, to shape a life according to inner strength. Central to this vision is Nietzsche's idea of the will to power. He rejects the notion that living beings seek merely survival. For him, life inherently seeks expansion, transformation, expression. This drive, not necessarily violent, manifests in art, philosophy, ambition, and creation. The will to power is the underlying force of existence. It's the root of both suffering and greatness. Nietzsche also directs his hammer toward metaphysics. He condemns the Platonic Christian distinction between the true world of ideals and the imperfect world of senses. This dualism, he argues, denies the richness of lived experience and teaches contempt for life. Instead, Nietzsche demands a return to the real, to the earth, the body, the fleeting moment. He urges us to embrace the world as it is, painful, chaotic, beautiful, and finite. His philosophy becomes almost therapeutic, but not in a comforting sense. Nietzsche's therapy is fierce. He offers no easy answers, only confrontation. His hammer strikes at illusions we hold dear, at our desire for safety, and at the crutches we use to avoid responsibility. Once the idols fall, what remains is an open space, terrifying, but also full of creative possibility. This process demands rare courage. Nietzsche knew his work would not be widely accepted. That's why his style is deliberately unsystematic, full of aphorisms, contradictions. In Poetic Fire, he didn't want to write a doctrine. He wanted to provoke, to awaken. His words are like mirrors that distort or perhaps reveal the true face of the reader. Each phrase challenges us to think differently. To break with routine thought, Nietzsche also rejects the idea of objective absolute truth. For him, every truth is a perspective, a product of interpretation, not divine revelation. This is not lazy relativism. Rather, it acknowledges that truth is tied to will, culture, and power. The philosopher, then, is not a mere detective, uncovering facts, but an artist shaping vision. His hammer is also a weapon against rational arrogance. Nietzsche distrusts reason when isolated from the body, emotion, and instinct. He believes Western philosophy made a fatal mistake by overvaluing cold logic and neglecting passion and embodiment. True philosophy, for him, must come from the whole person, mind, body, and soul, in conflict and harmony. This leads to his critique of the herd or mass mentality. The herd favors obedience, sameness, and resentment toward those who stand out. It fears creativity and punishes deviation. Nietzsche's hammer challenges this conformity. It's a call to individuation, to live not as a function of the crowd, but as a unique force of becoming. Yet Nietzsche has no interest in founding a new religion or ideology. He distrusts any fixed system of thought. His goal is freedom. Freedom from dogma, from guilt, from prepackaged morality. And true freedom, he knows, is terrifying to many, because it comes without guarantees. Still, he is not a nihilist in the passive sense. Nietzsche distinguishes between passive nihilism, despair in the face of lost meaning, and active nihilism, which clears the ruins for new creation. His philosophy belongs to the latter. The blows of his hammer are not final. They are the beginning of reconstruction. But this rebuilding must be personal, self-directed, and courageous. Nietzsche's provocative style has inspired artists, writers, psychologists, and revolutionaries. His fierce critique of Western values helped shape existentialism, psychoanalysis, postmodernism, and cultural theory. His impact extends far beyond philosophy. It permeates music, film, literature, and even political discourse. Reading Nietzsche is not safe. He does not allow passive consumption. His texts demand emotional involvement, intellectual bravery, and a willingness to be transformed. His philosophy is less a system than an experience, one that begins in doubt and may end in personal rebirth. He never believed in salvation through external forces. For Nietzsche, redemption is only possible when the individual confronts the chaos of life with open eyes and a strong heart. His hammer shatters illusions, but it also points toward the greatness that becomes possible when one embraces life without. Excuses his blows still echo more than a century after his death. The world remains filled with new and old idols, waiting for philosophers brave enough to question them. Nietzsche's challenge is as urgent now as ever. Live with intensity, think with boldness, and create with uncompromising honesty. Philosophy by blows is not just a metaphor, it is an invitation. To think is not only to reason, it is to risk, to bleed, to rebuild. Nietzsche's hammer is not just destructive, it is an instrument of tuning, of listening deeply, and of revaluing life. In an age of fragile truths and shallow convictions, it may be time to pick up that hammer and start philosophizing with courage. To take up Nietzsche's hammer today is to accept a profound responsibility, to test every value we live by, to uncover what is borrowed, inherited, or unexamined. In a time when ideological camps offer ready-made identities and moral codes, Nietzsche's call is deeply unsettling, yet incredibly necessary. He asks, are these beliefs truly yours, or are they echoes of someone else's fear? This is not a comfortable path. Nietzsche's philosophy is not for those seeking comfort or approval. It demands solitude, introspection, and the willingness to live without guarantees. The thinker who takes this path becomes a wanderer, not in search of truth as an external prize, but in pursuit of authenticity as a daily practice. This journey, Nietzsche suggests, is the only one worth taking. Such wandering is not aimless. It is a dance with the unknown, a refusal to settle too quickly. Nietzsche believed that fixed certainties, even when comforting, eventually become prisons. Better to live in creative tension, than in obedient resignation. He saw becoming not being as the essence of human life. To become is to remain in flux, to remain open, to remain vulnerable and alive. Yet even in this vulnerability, there is strength. Nietzsche's ideal is not invincibility, but resilience, the ability to withstand, to suffer without being broken, to grow through one's wounds. He understood that life is not a safe process, but a dangerous adventure. And it is precisely in facing that danger that the deepest forms of beauty and meaning can emerge. This radical view of life extends to Nietzsche's relationship with art. For him, art is not an escape from reality, but an intensification of it. The artist, like the philosopher, does not deny the chaos of existence. He shapes it, gives it form, makes it bearable. In this sense, Nietzsche saw aesthetic creation as a higher form of truth, one that doesn't depend on facts, but on force, vision, and feeling. Art for Nietzsche is also rebellion, is the assertion of the individual against the anonymous machinery of culture. The artist says, "This is how I see it." The philosopher with the hammer echoes, "This is how I choose to live." Both acts require bravery, because both risk rejection, misunderstanding, and solitude. And yet, Nietzsche never saw solitude as a curse. In solitude, he believed, the individual becomes clear to himself. Away from the noise of the herd, one can finally hear the whispers of one's own instincts, intuitions, and desires. True solitude is not isolation, but sovereignty. It is not loneliness, but a deeper kind of connection with oneself, with existence, with becoming. But this kind of inner clarity is difficult to achieve in a world of constant distraction. Today, the herd is digital, always connected, always reacting. Algorithms reinforce conformity. Outrage substitutes for thought. Nietzsche's hammer is needed here too, not just against moral illusions, but against the illusions of connection, productivity, and self-worth that our technologies create. To philosophize with a hammer now is to disconnect, to reclaim silence, depth, and slowness in a culture addicted to speed. It is to say, not every impulse is valid, not every trend is worth following, not every opinion deserves equal weight. Nietzsche's courage was not only in what he destroyed, but in what he refused to become. Refusal, in Nietzsche's hands, is not weakness, it is creation. Saying no to mediocrity is the first step toward saying yes to greatness. The world doesn't need more polite agreement. It needs thinkers who can say no with purpose and then offer something better in its place. This is how the overman emerges, not through domination, but through disciplined creation. Yet discipline for Nietzsche is not repression. It is channeling one's chaos toward a vision. He admired those who could hold both the Dionysian and the Apollonian within them, the wild emotional energy of life alongside the form-giving force of reason. The highest human type is the one who does not eliminate contradiction, but learns to dance with it. In this dance, we may discover a new kind of ethics not imposed from above, but crafted from within. Nietzsche never offered commandments, he offered tools. The hammer is not a judge's gavel, but a sculptor's chisel. Each strike shapes a life, not according to rules, but according to rhythm, intuition, and necessity. Such a life cannot be imitated. That is why Nietzsche resisted being turned into a doctrine. He wanted followers who would not follow, readers who would tear his books apart and, if necessary, contradict him. The only tribute he desired was the creation of new thinkers, new artists, new souls. This is the enduring invitation of his work, not to admire from a distance, but to enter the arena. Not to quote him endlessly, but to wrestle with him, and with ourselves. To use the hammer not as a weapon of destruction, but as a tool of renewal. Because beneath every illusion lies a deeper truth waiting to be uncovered. And behind every broken idol lies the possibility of becoming fully, fearlessly human. To be fully, fearlessly human, that is Nietzsche's ultimate challenge. It means embracing the full spectrum of existence, joy and suffering, clarity and madness, creation and collapse. He believed that only those who confront the darkest parts of life can experience its highest peaks. This is why he asked, "Have you ever said yes to a single joy? Then you must also say yes to all its pain." Nietzsche's thinking cuts through moralism, but not through ethics. He doesn't advocate cruelty or indifference. Rather, he seeks a higher standard, one that is rooted in strength, honesty, and creation. Weakness in his eyes is not physical incapacity, but the inability to face reality without illusions. Strength is not domination, but integrity in the face of chaos. The modern world often misreads Nietzsche because it craves simplicity. We want heroes or villains. He offers neither, speaks not in answers, but in tensions between beauty and brutality, solitude and ecstasy, freedom and burden. His philosophy resists closure. It demands that we keep asking, keep challenging, keep becoming. Many have tried to co-opt Nietzsche's ideas for political ends, twisting his concept of the Übermensch or misusing his critique of morality. But Nietzsche abhorred nationalism, dogma, and mass movements. His vision was deeply individual, existential, and ethical. He sought not a new collective identity, but a renewed personal authenticity. This authenticity is forged in fire. Nietzsche believed that one must become what one is. But this becoming is not automatic. It requires peeling away layers of false identity, confronting the pain of change, and daring to become unfamiliar to oneself. You must become your own chaos, he says, because only through chaos can a dancing star be born. The dancing star is one of his most poetic metaphors. It is not just a symbol of creation, but of joy, a joy earned, not given. It comes not from escaping the world, but from plunging into it. Not from removing oneself from suffering, but from transforming it into art, into thought, to life lived with burning clarity. This is why Nietzsche valued laughter, not superficial laughter, but the deep, defiant laughter of one who has seen the abyss and still chooses to dance. For him, laughter was a weapon, a release, a triumph. It signaled a soul that was no longer afraid, a soul that had passed through fire and returned, not bitter, but blazing in this blazing. Nietzsche saw a kind of redemption, not religious, but existential. Not salvation from the world, but a transfiguration within it. He wanted human beings to become gods, not by worshiping higher powers, but by embodying creative force, artistic mastery, and spiritual resilience. The Overman is not above humanity, but the deepest expression of it. This spiritual resilience is rare. It demands solitude, discipline, and vision. It requires that we break free from the gravitational pull of comfort and tradition. Nietzsche knew that most would reject this path, but he wrote for the few, for those who could not help but ask deeper questions, who could not rest until they made sense of their suffering. Even suffering in Nietzsche's hands becomes sacred, not as punishment, but as potential. Every wound is a doorway, every fall, a chance to rebuild on firmer ground. He teaches us to stop fleeing from pain and start listening to it, to let it teach us what no doctrine ever could. In this, we find not despair, but rebirth. This rebirth is never final. It is an ongoing process, like forging a sword that must be reforged every day. Nietzsche believed that the task of becoming never ends. The moment we believe we are complete, we begin to rot. The only true life is one of constant overcoming, not of others, but of ourselves. Such overcoming requires love, not sentimental. Love, but fierce love. Love for life in its totality. Love that does not flinch at death, at failure, at impermanence. Nietzsche's love for life was so intense that he could embrace even its horrors. He looked at life directly and said, yes, even when it was ugly, broken, or absurd. This is not nihilism. This is its antidote. Nietzsche didn't deny meaning. He demanded that we create it, not borrow it, not copy it, not inherit it, but forge it in the fires of experience. And that meaning, once forged, is more solid than any inherited truth. It's more luminous than any borrowed light. In the end, Nietzsche doesn't give us answers. He gives us the tools to destroy our false answers and the courage to seek new ones. He gives us the hammer, not the statue. He gives us the question, not the dogma. He reminds us that philosophy is not something to be studied. It is something to be lived. To live with Nietzsche's hammer is to walk a dangerous path. It is also to walk with fire in your chest, vision in your eyes, and a fierce kind of love for everything that is real, raw, and unfinished. It is to become what you are no matter what it costs. And perhaps after all the idols have shattered, after every illusion has been ground to dust under the weight of the hammer, something strange begins to emerge from the silence. Not a new God, not a new truth, but a trembling echo. Something ancient yet unborn. Not everyone will hear it. Most will turn back, clutching their broken certainties, begging for the comfort of old lies. But a few, a rare few, will feel the tremor in their chest. They'll smile, not knowing why.
They'll
take one step further into the unknown, not guided by faith, not driven by fear, but called by something deeper, a whisper beyond good and evil, fire behind the eyes, question that won't go away. And in that moment, just before the abyss answers back, they'll realize the hammer was never meant to destroy the world. It was meant to awaken the one who dares to rebuild it. Now tell me, are you still listening? Or are you already reaching for the handle?